100 forgotten dishes that made the 1950s magical. The kitchen door always creaked in that familiar way as you slipped inside, barefoot on the cool linoleum. Nobody cared if your feet were sticky from the spilled juice. You darted straight to the counter, eyes on the cookie jar or the leftover cake on the table. Parents didn't schedule your snacking. They just told you to wash your hands before dinner. You made your own fun. Thirsty? You gulped cold tap water from the kitchen sink. Hungry? You raided the fridge for half a sandwich or a slice of cheese. It was unsupervised magic from breakfast to bedtime. You balanced on stool rungs, sniffed steaming casseroles, and nibbled snacks while waiting for the oven timer to ding. And no one worried. No phones, no kitchen rules beyond, "Don't burn the toast." Just you, the smell of fresh bread, and the world of culinary possibilities feeling endless. Somehow, you always managed to sneak a bite without getting caught, and the morning light slips across the linoleum like it's trying to wake you up gently. The faint hum of the refrigerator mixes with the pop and click of the chrome toaster, and you know exactly what comes next. You grab the cereal box and shake it just enough to hear that crinkly rustle, the promise of something sweet inside. Frosted flakes tumble into your bowl, each flake catching the light like tiny golden sails. You pour milk over them, and it spills over the edges just slightly, a little mess you secretly love. From across the room, the toaster springs, and Eggo waffles pop up like little golden clouds. You reach for them with sticky fingers, butter melting instantly as it hits the hot surface. The smell curls through the kitchen, mixing with the faint aroma of sugar from sugar smacks, and suddenly the morning feels like magic. You remember dipping your toast into warm milk or sprinkling a little extra sugar on top, feeling like a tiny chef, experimenting with the day's first masterpiece. You glance at the counter and see pre-sliced cheese toast, ready to go, the edges perfectly even, as if some invisible hand had anticipated your hunger. The tangy scent of Del Monte fruit cocktail drifts from the open can, and you scoop a spoonful, letting the syrup drip down your chin before anyone notices. Each bite feels like a reward, a tiny celebration of something so ordinary it hardly seemed noticed at the time. The kitchen buzzes softly with small appliances and quiet conversations, parents humming, siblings clattering dishes, the world outside still waking up. Even the simplest meals were packed with wonder. You remember how cereal boxes promised adventures, puzzles, jokes, tiny prizes hidden inside the wrappers. Every bite was colorful, sweet, and full of life. Mornings weren't rushed errands. They were little ceremonies, a prelude to the day's adventures. The smell of toast, the crunch of cereal, the syrupy fruit dripping from your spoon. These were small moments that stayed in memory long after the bowls were empty. And then there were the desserts, the early signs of a cultural explosion that would define the decade. You could see it in the bright packaging on the shelves, the way every sweet treat seemed to wink at you from the counter, hinting at afternoons filled with ice cream cones, puddings, and baked goodies that didn't just satisfy hunger. They promised joy, fun, and the kind of innocence that made the 1950s morning unforgettable. You step into the kitchen, and the sweet scent hits you instantly, thick and warm, curling around your shoulders like a hug. Betty Crocker cake mix boxes line the counter, their colorful wrappers promising golden layers in minutes. You pour the mix into a bowl, add the eggs and water, and the batter glimmers under the morning light. Butter sizzles as it melts in the pan, and you know the house will soon smell like pure comfort. You remember hovering nearby as your mom slid a tray of Pepperidge Farm cookies onto the cooling rack, the edges crisp, the center soft, each one a tiny triumph that felt like it had been made from scratch. Slice and bake dough waits patiently on the counter, a tube of convenience that somehow feels magical. You slice around, pop it onto the cookie sheet, and as it bakes, the smell spreads into every corner of the house. Even neighbors passing by could probably tell what was cooking. You recall the pride your mother felt, presenting these treats to family gatherings as if she had spent all morning mixing, rolling, and kneading herself. It was the kind of pride that made you feel the kitchen was a place of wonder, a small stage where ordinary ingredients became celebrations. The shortcuts didn't feel like cutting corners, they felt like tiny miracles. Kitchens transformed into bakeries, ovens humming like busy little engines. You watch the golden crusts form, the sugar caramelizing, and somehow each baked good carries a memory of laughter, sticky fingers, and the quiet thrill of indulgence. The aroma alone was enough to gather everyone around the table, teasing appetites and building excitement before the first bite. Even dessert plates felt like part of a ritual. A slice of cake, a cookie, a scoop of slice-and-bake dough turned into sweet rounds, all arranged carefully, like a promise kept. You remember the delight of sharing these with siblings, the quick grabs between adults, the way everyone savored these store-bought wonders as if they were homemade treasures. Every bite carried warmth, comfort, and a sense of family that seemed bigger than the kitchen itself. And while the sugar and butter wrapped the home in nostalgia, it was also part of a bigger cultural shift. Mass market sweets were no longer just a treat, they were a revolution, blending modern convenience with traditional pride. You could smell it, taste it, feel it in the clatter of dishes and chatter around the table. Every cookie, cake, and pastry was a tiny celebration of the 1950s kitchen, bridging the past and the present while paving the way for the candy culture that would soon dominate afternoons and imaginations alike. You step off the curb and the bell above the candy store door jingles like a signal to adventure. The air inside smells of sugar and chocolate, warm and heavy, curling around you as you take it all in. Shelves groan under the weight of bright wrappers, pastel peeps lined up like tiny marshmallow soldiers, good news bars stacked like shiny treasures, and little glass jars overflowing with peanut M&Ms that glimmered like coins in the sunlight. You reach for a handful, and the colors spill into your palm, sticky fingers already anticipating the first bite. You remember the thrill of choosing just the right treat, the delicate negotiation with pennies in your pocket. Each candy felt like a tiny victory, a secret prize that belonged only to you until it was shared, or traded, with a friend at school. You held the chewy squares to your lips, savoring the sugar, the chocolate, the crunch, and the moment that seemed to stretch forever. The candy store wasn't just a place, it was a kingdom of tiny joys, a place where childhood felt endless and every corner promised a new delight. The shelves were dizzying, stacked with jars of gumdrops, licorice ropes, and taffy twisted like rainbows. You could hear the wrappers crinkle before unwrapping, that small sound amplifying the anticipation. The colors, the scents, the textures, they all wrapped together into memories that made afternoons feel bright and endless. Even the smallest purchase carried a sense of independence, of secret adventure, and the unspoken understanding that life could be sweet, simple, and completely yours for a few cents. You remember sneaking a chocolate bar behind your desk, or swapping a handful of jelly beans with a friend. Every bite carried laughter, whispers, and the joy of tiny indulgences. The candy store shaped your days, decorating your childhood with color, texture, and taste that seemed impossible to forget. You could feel the sticky sweetness clinging to your fingers, the thrill of choosing, sharing and hoarding treasures that were gone too quickly but lingered in memory. And while pocket-sized treats gave daily pleasure, they hinted at a larger indulgence waiting in diners and dinner parties. Pastry stacked high, sundaes dripping with whipped cream, desserts presented like jewels. This was the next step from the candy jars, a world where sugar ruled and imagination ran wild. The small treasures of the corner shop led naturally to these showier delights, bridging the innocent joy of childhood with the decadent treats that would dominate every sweet-loving afternoon. You open the freezer, and the cold air rushes out like a tiny wind of promise. Rows of Swanson TV dinners gleam under the light, foil trays catching your eye like little metallic islands of possibility. You remember sliding one onto the oven rack, watching it spin under heat until the aroma of turkey, mashed potatoes, and corn filled the kitchen, all in less than half an hour. The idea that a complete meal could appear from a frozen box felt like magic, almost like stepping into the future without leaving home. Frozen pizzas sit stacked beside them, the cheese trapped under plastic like treasure waiting to melt. You recall how easy it was to pull one out, pop it into the oven, and wait for the crust to turn golden, the cheese bubbling, the pepperoni curling at the edges. Nights that might have meant hurried cooking or skipped meals became small celebrations, everyone gathering around the table to share something that once seemed impossible to make at home in minutes. Even the simplest toppings felt indulgent, and the smell alone was enough to make the family pause, noses twitching, anticipating that first savory bite. Ice cream cases spark another kind of wonder. Tiger tail, chocolate ripple, Neapolitan. Each pint promises a tiny adventure. You remember scooping a swirl into a bowl, the cold biting briefly before melting into creamy sweetness. These frozen delights could last weeks, even months, and each spoonful felt like a reward for surviving the day, a little piece of joy captured in cold perfection. You could hear the spoon scrape the bottom of the container and feel that mix of satisfaction and excitement, knowing the freezer held more treasures just waiting for discovery. The freezer didn't just store food, it reshaped how homes ran. Meals arrived faster, desserts lasted longer, and families felt a kind of futuristic convenience that made every dinner feel like a treat. You remember watching your parents marvel at how simple life had become, their pride in modern appliances blending with the nostalgia of home-cooked flavor. Even chores seemed lighter when the solution to hunger could be pulled from icy shelves in minutes. And while the kitchen held this new frozen wonder, it hinted at the bright neon of diner counters, where meals arrived hot, plated, and ready to eat. The magic of frozen trays and ice cream cases was the domestic version of the diner experience, bringing a sense of innovation and excitement to mid-century America. Every pop of the oven, every swirl of frozen cream, made the future feel closer, tastier, and wonderfully immediate. You step through those diner doors and suddenly you're hit by that sweet whirl of syrupy air, like a promise draped in neon glow. You see the jukebox in the corner, lights flickering mid-tune, and it feels like that moment when the music wraps around your laughter. You catch the faint zing of metallic plates sliding across formica, and in that second, your heart flips at the thought of the Whopper, layered with patty juice, crisp lettuce pressing through sesame seeds, the whole thing sturdy and warm in your hands. Your fingers graze the edge of a banana split, cold scoops melting into the pool of cherry-hued syrup, and the cherry on top catches your eye like a wink. You lean in and almost taste that blend of vanilla and strawberry and chocolate all fighting for your attention. Right next to it, the peach cobbler glistens, chunks of peach collapsing into bubbling golden sauce that clings to your spoon in lazy rivers, sticky and sweet, promising that gooey comfort you thought only existed in dreams. And then there's the Cheese Whiz, oozing from its little metal cup, a perfect mess that found its way onto crispy fries and burgers, its tangy glow shining under the diner's neon lights, somehow both ridiculous and brilliant.